Have you ever seen that terrifying image? A figure wearing a long black leather coat with a strange mask covering their face, with a beak so long that it looks like some kind of bird-human creature. This image still appears in horror movies and Halloween costumes today. But this was not some fictional monster. This was a plague doctor. And the most terrifying part is that this costume was meant to save patients. But did it really provide protection? Or was it just a terrifying symbol of superstition and desperation? Today, we are going to look inside that long-beaked mask. And let me tell you right now, the reality is far more terrifying than the picture. Just imagine, picture 17th century Europe. Even after the horrific era of the Black Death, the plague kept coming back again and again. This was not just an ordinary disease, this was mass terror. People woke up in the morning not knowing if they would even be alive by evening. A white cross marked on the door meant that someone infected was inside that house. The entire city was gripped by fear. People could not understand how this disease was spreading. They did not have science, only superstitions. Some people thought it was the wrath of God, while others believed it was witchcraft. Even doctors were completely helpless. They had no idea how to treat it. The real cause of the disease, the Yersinia pestis bacteria, nobody even had a clue about it. In such times, death had become a daily reality. And it was in this atmosphere of fear and darkness that the plague doctors emerged. These doctors were often appointed by the government or city council to treat both the poor and the rich, so that everyone could receive treatment. But the surprising thing is that most of the prominent doctors had already fled the city. So this work was often done by doctors who were either very inexperienced or those who had no other option left. Even seeing these doctors was a terrifying experience. They looked like messengers of death, and many people believed that wherever this doctor went, death would surely follow. Now let us talk about that iconic uniform. This was not just some random outfit. Every single part of it had a thought behind it. Although that thinking was completely wrong. First of all, that long leather coat. This coat would reach down to the knees, even when open at the end. Its purpose was to protect the doctor's skin from miasma, which means deadly air. The biggest belief of that era was that disease spreads through bad air. Then came the glass or goggles that covered the face. People believed that disease could spread not just by breathing or touching, but also by looking. A kind of evil eye. That is why the goggles were there, to protect the eyes from that evil eye. Then there was that wooden stick. This stick was not just a fashion statement. It had a very practical purpose. Doctors used this stick to examine the patient's body so they would not have to touch the patient directly. They could also check the patient's pulse with it. And sometimes this same stick was used to keep the patient's family members at a distance. But the most mysterious and terrifying part of this entire outfit was that long-beaked mask. This mask was not made just to look scary. Doctors believed that this was their greatest protection. The beak was so long so that protective things could be filled inside it. This outfit did not create confidence in people, it created deep fear. A doctor who himself looked like death. How could he save anyone's life? This uniform had become a symbol of death rather than medicine. So why exactly was that long beak there? Was it just meant to scare people? Absolutely not. Doctors of that era believed this beak was their greatest protection. In reality, this beak was a kind of primitive air filter. But the thing this filter was filled with was completely useless by today's standards. Inside this beak were dried flowers, herbs, and all kinds of aromatic substances. This beak was filled with things like lavender, rose petals, mint, camphor, and cinnamon. The idea was that when the doctor breathed, this sweet-smelling air would enter his lungs and protect him from disease. This entire belief was based on the miasma theory. According to miasma theory, disease spreads through foul-smelling, contaminated air. People believed that the stench of garbage, the smell of rotting corpses, or the foul odor from a sick person's body was the cause of the plague. So they thought that if they covered these bad smells with sweet fragrances, the disease would stop. This was a deadly form of aromatherapy. But the biggest irony here is that the things they stuffed in the beak were completely powerless against the real danger, which was bacteria. They were unable to fight it in any way whatsoever. In fact, many times, this beak proved even more dangerous. Imagine on a hot summer day, a doctor walking among the sick for hours. The herbs stuffed inside his beak would start rotting from sweat and moisture. And then those very rotted materials, which become a breeding ground for bacteria, would enter the doctor as he breathed. This was a protection that itself became the danger. This mask certainly looked terrifying, but it was an illusion that must have claimed the lives of hundreds of doctors. Because the truth is that plague did not spread through air, but rather through the bites of fleas from rats. And to protect against that tiny flea, this giant beak was completely useless. This was a tragic failure of medieval science.